It is always a pleasure to be with you, my friend Richard. Good to see you. And you made a post recently on LinkedIn that jumped out at me and really resonated for multiple reasons. Wanted to hear a little bit about the inspiration for it. But first off, how are you doing?
Good, really good. It's always good to see you, Carson. Always good to connect. And we've been kind of missing two ships passing in the night here recently. You've been traveling all over, and we've been just going in different directions. But it's always good to get caught up with you, friend.
It is always good to come back around, and you always bring the goods, man. You always have something, some big thought. And this one was your manager has more impact on your mental health than your therapist or your doctor. Having a good leader can literally change your life. It's so true. And I don't even want to get started on the quality or lack thereof sometimes of therapists and doctors, but
That's a whole
talk to me
nother.
about, yeah, talk to me about the inspiration for this one.
Well, first of all, I am very fortunate. I have a great leader that Nicole in my life. She's just such a fantastic leader that sets an example for what great leaders look like. But I, like a lot of people, I've had bad leaders, and I know what it does in your personal life on the weekends or at night, and how it drags you away and drags your focus. And that famous question, and I don't even know who said it or who started it, but people don't leave companies, they leave bad managers. And so I started going down this whole path of it. I don't think bad managers are bad people. As a matter of fact, I had a bad manager for 2.5, almost 3 years. And now that this person's not my manager, we're pretty good friends, and they're a really good person, and I'm convinced that bad managers aren't bad people. They just can't see those blind spots that they are doing, or activities or habits that they're doing, that is causing their people to tense up, to leave the company, or having their mental and physical, emotional, spiritual life impacted by this person. And I don't think they even know it.
Very astute observation per usual. And I think part of that is, part of it can be the Peter principle, people moving into a role that maybe they weren't, ready to take on, or, they were promoted for the wrong reasons. We get promoted to our level of incompetence. Um, I think another part of it can be the lack of leadership ability of those above us. If you're not trained or coached to be a good leader, you're not going to be unless you can learn it and figure it out on your own. I've had some great leaders, I've had some not so great ones, and but I would say, like, when you go back to why is this so intrinsically aligned with our own mental health, it's because we spend the preponderance of our time either at work or dealing with the fallout of work or the ramifications of work. Work is central to paying the bills, putting food on the table. And frankly, there have been many, many times in my life where the most validation I've actually gotten has been from work. That's been where I've been, seen and valued, and people have felt like I do a good job. I definitely don't always feel that way outside of work. So, yeah, I think that's the key element. It's, sometimes we talk about mental health like it's a separate thing from work, but unless your mental health is sound, you're not going to be able to show up as your best self. And, a manager kind of puts a lot of the wheels in motion because they're going to control a lot of your experience at work. Um, I have found, and over time, like, as you gain experiences, and I'm glad for instance, I've been in sales and sales leadership for a long time. I'm glad I carried a bag as long as I did because it gave me good credibility and wherewithal so I could see
For
blind
sure.
spots and I could help my team see around corners and I could actually coach them on the things that I wish I had known when I was in their shoes. But unless I had walked those footsteps, I wouldn't be able to do that. And I find sometimes it's when we have a manager that maybe came from somewhere else, some other entity, some other company. We hire from outside the company to bring in somebody who's done it great somewhere else at a competitor, but they don't necessarily know the language, the tribal knowledge. And so sometimes we can be putting them behind the eight ball. And I think those types of challenges, they're not insurmountable. And to your point, even great people can be boxed into these pressure situations that they're just not ready for, and they don't have the wherewithal and the trust and the credibility yet to get themselves out.
And you mentioned it so many times. We bring people from the outside that maybe they don't know the culture or they don't know the people or the situations or the systems. And so they're managing from a disadvantage. But then when we promote people from within, even even the managers that come from the outside, so many times we manage like our former manager managed. And depending on whether that person was good or bad, that's the track or the ditch that we get into. We get into this ditch of management, and we're like, well, I've been promoted into this management role, so the person that was here before me said, hey, I want to know everything that you've been doing. I want to be copied on all the emails. I want to do X, Y, and Z, and don't make any decisions without me. And oh, by the way, don't go above me and have a conversation with our manager's manager without me knowing about it, because that's all they knew in their when they were being managed. And so most of the time we learn from the people who were above us. And if we had a great manager, all of a sudden we have those habits built in for us. But I've noticed there's a lot of habits that these type of managers that people are leaving companies because of those bad managers. There's habits or blind spots that they have that they just do not realize that are pushing and driving people away.
So well said. I think about even the worst manager or managers that I've had, and there are still things to this day that I practice that they taught me. And so I think
Wow.
there is some good in all of them, but it's the situation, it's kind of the foundation that they set, the climate that they create. I think every leader creates an atmosphere. And so whether they realize it or not, people are, living in it and breathing it every single day. Some of them create oxygen, which is clarity and trust and growth and space. And then others create pressure or they push down the pressure. I think a lot of the challenges come with how we react and respond to pressure. Let's be real. Right now, we're living in a very ambiguous, unclear time. There's all this fear and drama and information at our fingertips, which is empowering in a way, but in the wrong hands, it can be very, very dangerous. And we don't know what our jobs, what our careers, what our kids'
So
jobs are
true.
going to be, a year, 5 years, 10 years from down the road. That's not easy to navigate through sometimes for all people. And I think that's where um, there's this awesome documentary on Netflix uh, with Doc Rivers, and it's the coach's
Oh,
playbook. And he said, pressure is a privilege. And that is true. Pressure is a privilege because it means you're playing a game that matters. But if you choke on it and you act like a jerk to everybody else around you because of the way it makes you feel, guess what? That ain't good for you, and it ain't good for anybody else you touch. And that's where this can damage people's mental health.
yeah, and so many times, and I love Doc Rivers, and he's such a great coach, and had a great philosophy. But what's interesting about what you said, Carson, is one of the things that I try to do, and I coach managers and leaders and executives all the time. That one of my favorite questions to ask my team is, "What's it like on the other side of me?"
Mm.
Because you can't see what you are. So many times we'll have a one-on-one or a mid-year or a year-end review, and we will go through all this litany of things and talk to them and just really just pour the bucket out on them, and we don't pause enough to say, okay, hey Carson, now it's your turn. I'd love for you to give me some feedback. What has this last 6 months been? What have I done to help provide? Where have been some ways where I haven't been able to? And most of the time, our egos won't let us ask that question. What's it like on the other side of me? Because we're afraid of what that response may be. And I have gotten some of the best I've received, some of the best coaching from some of my people. One time I asked that question, there were and I reframed it. I was like, hey, if you were me in my position, what something you would do different? And so that if you're not ready to ask the question, what's it like being on the other side of me? Ask, hey, if you were in my seat, what would you do differently? And I got some great feedback. Hey, but I would communicate more often. Okay, tell me more about that. Well, I would, make sure everybody knows the agenda. I would make sure everybody. So what they were giving me was feedback for Richard Vickers.
Yeah.
And I was able to take that and move to a more communicated. This team evidently needed more communication. And you just never know when you open yourself up for that white space or the feedback to be able to become a better leader.
God, I love it. I am reading Tribe of Mentors right now by Tim
Okay.
Ferriss. And
My
there is
gosh.
one of the mentors, I don't remember who it was, but one of the um, pieces of advice that was given was exactly what you just said. It was basically be open to asking the question, what am I missing? And then just listen.
Whew.
Because that's the thing, no matter what, no matter how hard we try, we're going in with tunnel vision. There's
Yeah.
always other experiences and perspectives that are out there. And that's true of everything. That's true of the world. That's true of politics. That's true of everything. Relationships. We've got to make sure we go in and we try to seek to understand people on our team and even ourselves, like we are in the right to be in the role we're in, right? So I don't
Yeah.
need or want somebody second guessing everything I do or telling me how to do my job. And so I know my team doesn't want that either. And so it's not my job to go in and tell my team how to do something or what to do in every situation. It's kind of like parenting. You set the right foundation, they're going to go off and do it their way. But when they fall flat on their face,
Yeah.
like you still have to be there to support them when they come back and see them where they are. It isn't about, oh, I told you so. It's more about, hey, that's awful. I'm sorry you had that experience. Tell me more. What did we learn? Because those are the key elements. And that's why I always tell leaders that I coach, your team earned the right to be there. So they don't need you to, tell them what to do, how to do it. Make sure you're seeing them, where they are, promoting them, finding their strengths and their superpowers. The
Yeah.
greatest thing that I could ever do as a leader was get over myself. And
Mm.
trust me, sometimes I'm still working on it. Like, because we're navigating our own careers, right? I have to still be a champion of myself and of my career, but it ain't all about me at this stage. There was a quote, and I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan, and obviously greatest basketball player of all time for what he did, not only on the court, but just how he elevated the game. He was the game of the
Right.
90s. He was the greatest champion ever. And, he made a comment when he came back out of retirement again to play for the Wizards. His best ownership thing he ever did was activate himself so that he could take a cellar dwelling Washington Wizards team one game away from the playoffs. But he made a comment like when he was interviewed about like he was coming off the bench and he was doing, just not the star of the team anymore. Well, he still
Right.
was, but he would say stuff like, "Hey, look, all the ego chasing and the stat chasing, I'm past all that stuff. That's for the
Yeah.
young guys. Like, I'm going to do whatever I can to help this team win." And that's the mentality we need to have as managers. See your people. They want to be seen, they want to be recognized, they want to be heard, just like you do, just like
Yeah.
you did. And if you can invest every day in your team and in your people and in your sphere and the people that you have the privilege of touching, like my gosh, man, rising tides are going to raise all ships. I've never worried about a result a day in my life. They've always been there because I've invested relentlessly in my people.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, Carson, I'm privileged. I probably have the best team around me now than I've ever had in my career.
Love it.
I've coached and managed and led a lot of different teams. Right now, I feel like I have such a great team that is around me. But years ago, before all of this is a little advertisement for Microsoft, before all the Microsoft tools of delaying emails and delaying chats
Uh,
and delaying calendar invites. This guy was guilty of waking up on a Saturday or working late on a Tuesday at 9 o'clock. And I would have an idea on Saturday morning drinking coffee, and I'd fire off an email on Saturday morning, not thinking that my team would be at a soccer game or would be with their family or would be out to breakfast trying to disengage from work, and the ding and the buzz on their phone would go off, and immediately their blood pressure and their mind and their mental state shifted back to work, and I was robbing them from disengaging from work. I thought I was being a good man, working on vacation, maybe sending an email on vacation, answering some things, and letting my team know, hey, Richard's the champion out there. He's out there working. He's working on Tuesday night at 9 o'clock. Look at me. I wasn't trying to get them to engage. It was for my ego.
Yeah.
And now Microsoft has all these tools. You can delay a calendar invite. You can delay a Teams chat. You can delay an email to where the blood pressure of your team isn't raising up, and they're out there with soccer with little Susie or Johnny trying to be a mom or a dad, a family person, and you've just stolen that from them by sending that on off hour times.
Yeah. And dude, you nailed it, because it's all about, like, I want to appear like I'm the greatest manager of all time. Like, I want these guys to see me like driving hard. And the reality is, and also this is from Tribe of Mentors, there was one of the ladies who was interviewed, and her comment was, my team didn't need to see me as superhuman. They needed to see me as human. That's what's relatable. That's when people will run through the wall for you, is when they see you as human, just like them, when you are able to share an experience that you're going through. And I think the challenge is, like, I compare and contrast. And when I think about mental health and managers, I didn't come up in a great work culture. I had a manager who literally called me in the morning and would quote Gordon Gekko from Wall Street in the mornings, and he wasn't kidding. Like, he was dead serious.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, this guy was terrifying. And, it took a tremendous toll on mental health. And there were times where I would share something personal and it would be used against me very quickly.
Ooh.
And so I think the key element is, like with people, people have to earn trust. We as leaders, we have to earn trust, but managers have to earn our trust as well. We as leaders have to earn the trust of our people
Yeah.
and invest in those situations. And sometimes you got to give to get, like, being able to say, hey, I'm sorry I had to step away today because somebody in my family was going through something really challenging and I needed to be there for them.
Wow.
But then the same thing, when somebody needs to step away on my team to be with family or whatever it is, at a moment's notice, do what you got to do. You tell me what you need me to do to fill in, to pinch hit. Like that, those are the things that we can do in the day to day when the unforeseen happens to help people's mental health. Life is challenging enough as it is. So who in the world am I as a manager, to your point, to like rob people of joy or to make things harder on them?
Yeah.
I want people to show up as their best selves. But on the same token, that also doesn't mean coddle. I think about the best managers that I've had, and they were able to shoot me between the eyes with the tough feedback that I needed. Like, hey, Carson, you managed to make it real far on this certain skill, but it ain't
Yeah.
going to get you to the next level. It doesn't matter what you did as a salesperson, as a manager. It means
Yeah.
nothing. You can't carry it all on your back. And in fact, you don't want to. That means you're ineffective. The results that you get through your team by coaching them is the tail of the tape. And it stung. It irritated me, but it was the feedback that I needed in the moment, and she was right. So, those are the things that make me better. And so it isn't about, and you and I have had the conversation before about having tough conversations with people. We're not doing anybody any favors by sugarcoating, mincing words. We've got to let them know, like, hey, this is the role. You're not meeting the expectation.
Yeah, and that honest, transparent feedback is such a key part of being a great leader. And so many times I have found that, going back to this whole thing around the mental health of an associate, and a great leader can literally either change or make your emotional mental health go into a spiral. And I have found that micromanaging or trying to hover or helicopter over people is probably the most damning and damaging thing that a leader can do, because like you said, you got the feedback, hey, this is not going to be able to take you to the next level. And when you get at the next level, if you try to do all this stuff that you were doing, you will swivel out of into a burnout like the Tasmanian devil. If you do that, you'll just spin and burn out in a dust cloud. That's why you have to delegate and trust people. I, I tell people this all the time. We have highly compensated employees for a reason. They are grown ass adults that have been entrusted with this position. If they need me to spin around them and helicopter them and micromanage them, then either I'm in the wrong position or they're in the wrong position. One of us is irrelevant.
Yeah. Ain't that the truth? There was this character that I worked with 20 plus years ago when I was in the call center game, and we got promoted at the same time. And so then naturally there was some competition, right? I never lost, ever. Not a single month did I ever lose to this person. But here is why. It's not because I'm so good. It is because of how we led our teams. I took on more and more challenges. I wanted more and more people because I wanted to help. I've been very successful as a sales rep, and I wanted to help people be more successful. It was a stressful job. You're getting 100 calls a day back to back from people that were complaining about their service, and you had to upsell them. That can be a little stressful. But my mentality was, hey, let me give day-to-day incentives on, hey, if you do X that helps me and our team's metrics, then I'll give you time off the phone to do whatever you want to do. Or I'll sit out there in the call center, like sitting next to people. I would take calls for them, just having fun with them. We'd play music.
Right.
We'd sometimes do ridiculous things like, a challenge of like how many Sylvester Stallone movies can I name drop on this call with a customer? Like just ridiculous stuff. We
Without,
had fun. We
without
built
them
a
knowing
culture.
it or realizing it. Yeah.
That's it. That's the trick. But it was like we built a culture, and we just blew our number out every freaking month. And the other guy, he just fired everybody that was in his lower quartile. But he could never understand like why he couldn't catch me because he was like, "Well, I'm firing all my old low performers." But see, the thing is, like when when all you get focused on is performance and revenue and pipeline, like we don't measure what bad leadership is costing us.
Yeah.
Your people are losing confidence. They have untapped potential. They have burnout that's actually disguised as performance issues. And the best example was this other guy. He literally had a gentleman from his church that he recommended for the job. When people would get out of training, we would draft the training class. Whoever was the top manager always got the last pick. I always got the last pick. So I wound up with this guy from his referral that he didn't want. He passed on him
Oh, wow.
because he was very not, he wasn't a typical like call center sales rep. Let's put
Yeah.
it that way. He
He was
sounded a little,
Eeyore. He was Eeyore, not Tigger.
he was Eeyore. And so he was on my team. And what did we do? This guy wanted to be successful. So I said, look, man, let's write out a script in your voice. These are the things you need to hit and do. But I want you to write this thing and we're going to agree on it. And you're just going to do it on every call. And he did it first quarter, Fortune 500, top 5% of all reps in the company.
Holy cow.
That's what people can do in the right culture.
Yeah. That's untapped potential. It's all you're talking about is untapped potential. And probably whenever Carson, someday Richard Vickers passes away and you come and speak at my funeral, uh, I
Gotta go
expect
there on me, man.
I expect people to say, man, Vickers said a lot of blubbery things, but one thing that he said that stuck with me was, we are human beings, not human doings. And I think that's what we're talking about, because bad managers that lose people or affect people's mental capacity or drive people away from your respective companies, those bad managers see people as human doings
Mm-hmm.
instead of human beings. And if we just put ourselves in their shoes, oh, they may be at a soccer game. Oh, this this change in this calendar invite is coming to them at 5:30 a.m. in the morning, and they're having coffee with their spouse about their relationship, and I just ding them on their phone with a change in my calendar invite and just totally shifted their mental focus.
Yeah.
All we're talking about, Carson, is remembering that people are human beings, not human doings, and walking a mile in their shoes.
I couldn't agree more, man. And it starts when you start the conversation. Because I came up in a culture where it was all about business and numbers and results. I was kind of conditioned to start every conversation just diving right into the business. No fluff, no personal stuff, because hey, I'd been kind of burned on the personal side. And so I just stuck to business. And the best manager I ever had, she told me, she says, "Why do you always just jump right into the business? Because that's what we're here for, right?" No, because if they don't see you as a person, they're not going to give you their everything. They're not going to give you all their trust. And so making sure that you see the person on the other end of the screen or the other side of the table, making sure you see them first and ask them, like,
Yeah,
genuinely, like, how was the weekend? And then go beyond the aesthetics, like go beyond the how was the weekend? How's the weather? Go beyond that. Tell me more. Like,
yeah,
I spent I love asking people about their backdrop and their home office. Like, tell me about that, that piece of equipment or that, those books or whatever. It's like
yeah,
anything that gives you a window into them as a person and like understand their why, their motivations. Like that's what we're here for. Because if I can help fan the flame of their why and I can give them a positive experience, like we're doing this together. I'm not
yeah,
just asking you to follow me blindly. Like we're running hand in hand. We're running side by side. Like I don't need to run out in front. Like I want to go together. I think that's the key is we've got to actually see people as human beings, but we also have to meet them where they are and understand their experience and their journey. Like I'm no more important or anything than anybody else. Like we're all in
yeah.
this together.
Yeah, well, I always love these conversations, Carson, and I'll just close by saying this. And if you've got a bad manager and you're listening to this, be encouraged because I don't believe these bad managers are bad people. I think so many times they're human beings just trying to do, and they have forgotten or they don't realize some of these small little behaviors are eroding trust, they're eroding confidence, and they're certainly affecting their people that they're managing. They're affecting that mental health. They're affecting their physical health, sometimes even their physical body and their sickness that they're getting, the stress levels, that cortisol going up. So realizing that these folks are good people. They are just in need of somebody holding the mirror up to them to say, hey, help me understand when you send this on the weekend, do you realize what that does when I get this? Hey, help me understand when you are hovering over me or wanting to be copied on all of these emails, that makes me feel like I'm irrelevant. If I need to if I need to get your permission or get copied on all of this, now there are certain things that need to be and all of that. We understand that. But sometimes it's just holding the mirror up and letting somebody see some of their own mistakes and the way that their hair is combed or the way that their situation, the way that they're dressed that day. And you can lead. You can lead from the middle by doing some of those kind of things, having some of that honest, open conversation.
If you're a manager, and this is for you, me, all of us, it's a big responsibility and take it seriously. Your job is not to drive results. Yeah, you may be on the hook for results, but your job is to shape people and empower and enable them to be their best selves, put them in a position to win, help them see around blind spots, and elevate them. That's it.
Man, that is it. Always good to talk to you, my friend. Thanks for allowing me to bloviate.
Back at you, my friend. Anytime. You can bloviate at me anytime. We'll see you next time, Richard.
Thanks, Carson.